Streamlined! One word. That is all it took for some people to conclude that this new edition was going to remove everything that makes Necromunda so special. People have said it's going to become another kill team. Games Workshop is dumbing it down. We're actually just going to stick playing with the old edition, thank you very much. This is before anybody had actually even seen the rules. But is this what streamlining actually means for Necromunda? Because I've already watched another Games Workshop community go through almost exactly the same thing. 2 years ago, Middle-earth strategy battle game got a new edition. We all had the same fears, the same arguments, the same predictions about how the streamlining of Middle-earth was going to remove all the things we loved about the game. But fast forward 2 years, and I think Middle-earth is actually in a really good place at the moment. Not because every change that Games Workshop made was perfect, but because the things that really mattered about the game did survive the transition. So before we decide that Necromunda is doomed, I think there is something worth learning from what happened in Middle-earth. So let's have a chat about it. So Necromunda is a game that's really loved by its community, and so, to be fair, you can completely understand why people reacted this way. Why do we need a new edition for something that is already so good? Why do we need to have change? You know, the things we love about Necromunda are its incredible customization, how every ganger is unique. You take them through campaigns, not just through single games. They get upgraded, they weave their own stories, the gang weaves its own story. You know, the game is so granular. There are all these weird interactions that crop up sometimes, you know, you're like, my ganger fell off the top of this railing, oh, there's a chemical pit down there, what happens when he falls in the pit? So on and so on. No other game that Games Workshop makes is anything like this, I think. The huge amount of customization and the huge amount of granularity. And so when we love these things, hearing the word streamlined is naturally really, really worrying, because we're like, are they going to take all these things away? The granularity, the customization, are they going to streamline it? So, you know, the reaction of the community is fair. But what I want to talk about is the lessons we can learn from Middle-earth strategy battle game, which went through much the same thing about 2 years ago. You know, we had a game that we loved to play. It didn't need change, so we thought, you know. We loved the rule set, it had just enough granularity, and yet it plays really well, it plays fast, and we were worried that they were going to dumb it down for no reason. In fairness, there were some problems with the edition. It'd been going for enough years that with Games Workshop's repeated release of new supplements with new units and new army lists, it's very difficult for a beginner player to get abreast of all the different armies that were out there, for instance. And so for a new edition, just bringing all of those army lists together into one book, that's actually quite a useful thing to have happened. If they could just leave the rules alone, we said. But they didn't leave the rules entirely alone. I mean, the game is broadly the same as it has ever been, which is a good thing. But there were some things that were removed, in the name of streamlining, which some people in the community liked, some people didn't. A really obvious example to me is that we used to have something in the previous edition called special strikes. So if your model had a sword, or an axe, or a mace, or a hammer, there were different types of special strike they were allowed to do. A sword wielder is allowed to feint. An axe wielder is allowed to do a piercing blow with his axe. And that was removed, entirely. Now your model just has a hand weapon. And that feels, on the face of it, like a terrible loss of complexity. But in practice, was it really? I don't think so, because actually, most of these weapons have an obvious choice anyway. Your model only has one weapon, so you were never choosing between doing the axe special strike and the sword special strike. You were just choosing whether to do the special strike for the weapon you have. And it also led to some quite questionable things in the name of optimization. So people would remodel their entire Goblin Town army to all have axes, so that they can all piercing strike all the time. And is that a meaningful decision to make anymore? If you've remodeled everything to have the same thing, so it can always do the same strike, that's not a decision anymore. And so actually removing this, you know, has removed some rules overhead that wasn't really adding much tactical depth, I would argue. So, as we talk about Necromunda, I think the question is going to be not did they remove rules, but did they remove meaningful decisions in those rules? Okay, so what have we actually seen so far in the previews for Necromunda? Well, there was a Warhammer community article recently that gave us some examples and tried to tell us about the changes they were trying to make. And actually, quite a lot of those changes they talked about were more rules, new rules, so specialisations for gangers, more brutes and hangers-on in your gang, more equipment choices for each different ganger, more between-game actions. So actually, that's more game they've added. Doesn't sound like streamlining. What they've said they've tried to do is we have fewer books. They tried to streamline armor saves, bottle tests, the campaign post-game sequence, firepower dice, and I think the point they're trying to make was that they're trying to reduce the bookkeeping. Games Workshop don't appear to be streamlining the game, but they appear to be streamlining the administration of the game. Now, of course, the caveat. Because we haven't played the game yet, right? This is all marketing, the preview. And marketing is one thing, the actual rules are another. So we won't know whether they've succeeded until people actually have played some games. But it's interesting that almost every example we've been shown so far looks like streamlining the administration rather than stripping away what makes Necromunda Necromunda. So I'll end by saying that Middle-earth taught me that a game can survive streamlining remarkably well if the things that actually make that game good survive it too. So if you could streamline one part of Necromunda without changing its identity, what would it be? And what's the one thing about Necromunda you absolutely don't want Games Workshop to touch? Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do. See you next time.